so excited to start this brand new series called Unshakable. We're going to be going through the book of Daniel for the next 8 weeks, and I'm telling you, do not miss a week. It is going to be amazing. Me and Manny are going to tackle this thing together, and I'm just excited for you guys to hear just what the Lord has been speaking to us and just the life of an amazing man and how we can really utilize a lot of these things that he goes through in our own life. So welcome to New Hope Calvary Chapel. I'm Pastor David. Thank you for joining us this morning. If this is your first time, welcome. We're excited that you are here, excited that you decided to join us this morning. Let me ask you this. Who loves roller coasters? Raise your hand. Wow, there's a lot of people that love roller coasters in here. All right. So next Sunday, we'll be at Lagoon. We're going to hang out. I'll preach just as we're on the roller coaster. We'll see what it's like. So do me a favor really quick. Why do you love roller coasters? You can shout at me. Go ahead. Give me a reason. Adrenaline rush? Scary? You like to be scared? Okay. Someone hide around the corner. Wait for it to pop out. It's exhilarating. It's exciting. What else? What else? The build-up, ups and downs. You feel free. That's a great one. That's a good one. I like that. The good one, Roger, the ups and downs. We get it. It's a good dad joke, good dad joke. I like it. I like it. Okay, it's exhilarating, right? It's exciting. It's scary. It's something that you feel free. You feel alive almost, right? As you at the very top of that drop, and you're just excited, and you just look down. You're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing! And then you let out the amazing screams, and everyone's screaming, and some people are terrified, and others are throwing up right on you. I mean, who knows what's happening on a roller coaster, right? It's kind of crazy. The interesting thing is what we just said. It's exhilarating, it's exciting. But if we face the same drops, the same speeds, the same turns, the same terrors even, we get from riding a roller coaster in any other situation, we would hate it and never want to ride again. Yes? There's only one place we really like that, and that's a roller coaster. For instance, riding a bike. Do you want to do the same thing on a roller coaster that you do on a bike? Probably not, right? Probably not. You feel a little more vulnerable being on a bicycle. You wouldn't want to do the ups and downs and the loops and the turns and all those things. It would be not so exhilarating. Or riding in a car. Who'd want to do that in a car? You'd be excited. Yeah, come on, Manny. Do that in a car. It would be pretty difficult, pretty terrifying. You wouldn't want to be in your car doing the same drops, turns, speeds you do on a roller coaster. It's something, it wouldn't be exciting because it would be terrifying and legitimately terrifying. Something we do not like. But what's the difference? The drops and turns are fun and exciting because we trust the machine is doing what is intended to do. Yes? We trust the roller coaster. Who's ever been to, I think it's Knott's Berry Farm. Who's ever been to Knott's Berry Farm? Wow, quite a bit of you. Is it Colossal? Is that the wooden roller coaster? Yes?
Ghost Rider.
Is it Ghost Rider? Yes, Ghost Rider? Okay, Ghost Rider. When that first came out and was made out of wood, I remember riding it for the first time. It's amazing. 5 years later, it does not feel the same, and it feels like the whole thing's going to break. Anyone with me? Anyone been on it recently? You're like, this is not okay, right? You're not excited. But here's the thing. That machine was designed to do something it was intended to do, so it's fun and exhilarating. We trust that someone designed that roller coaster that way and that every part of the ride is perfectly planned, yes? That's why we go on roller coasters. We know that it's perfectly planned. In the same way, we can face the speeds, the turns, the drops, the highs, the lows in our life with confidence because we know who is in control of it. Jesus, you with me? Isn't that amazing? He's in control of it. He designed it. He designed everything that we go through. He designed every single thing that we're facing. And yes, it's difficult. The turns, the speeds, the ups and downs, the loops, all those things, they're hard, but we know who is in control. We can face any season. We can face any tragedy. We can face any chaos in our life with faith because we know who is in control. And let me give you something, church, this morning. It's when we are faithful, we can then be unshakable. You with me, church? It's when we're faithful, we can then be unshakable. It is so key that when we are faithful in our lives, when we set the goal, we know what Jesus wants in our life, we know what he desires, and we just continue to be faithful no matter what, no matter the ups and downs, no matter the chaos around us, because I believe as we are faithful, we can then be unshakable. This is the book of Daniel. This is Daniel and his friends' lives that are faithful and committed and willing to face anything with the knowledge, this is a key part of it, they're facing anything with the knowledge that God is in control and we will remain faithful, they will remain faithful no matter what. And guess what? No matter the cost. Can you say cost this morning? 1, 2, 3, cost. No matter the cost. No matter the cost, they're going to remain faithful. This is truly faith that is unshakable when we look at their life. If you don't mind with me turning your Bibles to Daniel chapter 1. This morning we're going to learn a little bit about Daniel and his friends. And my goal again through this whole series is that we'd walk away with a faith that is truly unshakable. No matter what we go through, we can get through it. No matter what we face, we can continue moving forward with faithfulness in the Lord because we know that he is in control. If we're willing to give a roller coaster ride that much faith, we better sure give Jesus a much greater faith. So in Daniel chapter 1, starting in verse 1, it says this. And in the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Jerusalem, into his hand, of Judah, with some of the articles of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar to the house of his God, and he brought the articles into the treasure house of his God. Then the king instructed Ashpenaz, that the master of the eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Israel and some of the king's descendants and some of the nobles, young men whom there was no blemish, but good-looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the language and the literature of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed for them a daily provision of the king's delicacies and of the wine which he drank, and 3 years of training for them. See that? 3 years they would be trained, so that at the end of that time they might serve before the king. Now, from among those of the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. To them, the chief of the eunuchs gave their name. He gave Daniel the name, I'm not going to say it, Belteshazzar. To Hananiah, Shadrach. To Mishael, Meshach. And to Azariah, Abednego. So what's interesting here is, this is literally a story that we're going to read about Daniel and his friends. They're taken as slaves under the king Nebuchadnezzar. They're required to learn and be taught the literature and the language of the Babylonians. This is it. He's very, very smart. What was happening is this king was taking over kingdom after kingdom after kingdom. And so what he naturally did when he took over a kingdom is he would start to teach the other people that weren't used to his kingdom and weren't used to his delicacies. He would teach them his delicacies. He would rein them in as slaves and then start to teach them. Why? So they can become a part of the culture. So they can be integrated into the culture. So this would include fashion, it would include food, it would include music, arts, writings, mode of thinking, ideas, proverbs, political systems. This is the school that they went through. They learned all of these things. And as you're reading this, it says they went for 3 years. So it's like college, right? They went to college for 3 years learning and trying to understand what King Nebuchadnezzar wanted them to understand. And what's interesting is they learned quite a bit, much more than I just listed. Astrology, they learned to be very, very smart in the world and what was happening at that time. So they poured everything they had into these people, but much more for them to just be integrated into the culture. Change what they knew and bring them into what he wants them to know. And so it wasn't just immersing them in the culture, it was changing them into the culture. These were the next leaders, and they had to groom them to be this way. And so we see this across history many times when a kingdom takes over. They want the other kingdom or the group of people they're taking over, they want to integrate them into their society and say, leave everything you know behind. You're now going to be like us. And so I want you to get a big picture of this, because as for that time, they're being poured into and they're learning everything about the culture, and it's a disconnect, right? They're trying to disconnect them to all they knew and all they were raised to know as Jews, as people who loved Jesus, who knew God, who read the Torah. They wanted to disconnect them from that and teach them the ways that they wanted to teach them. And so for these specific youths or young men, they held on to the importance of their personal faith So they were different. There was something unique about them. Though they were sitting there and though they were being forced to learn these things and being taught these things, they held on to something that was very, very important to them, and that was their faith. As we continue reading in verse 8, he goes on to say, "But Daniel proposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself." Something unique here. Now God had brought Daniel into favor and goodwill of the chief of the eunuchs. And the chief said to Daniel, "I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your food and your drink. For why should he see your faces looking worse than the other young men who are of your age? Then you would endanger my head before the king." So he's a little worried and scared. Daniel, why are you asking this? I don't want to say this to the king because everyone else is going to eat this. And you guys are going to look different if you're not eating the same exact food, if you're not eating the meat that we're providing for you. So Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, "Please test your servants for 10 days. Let them give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. Then our appearance be examined before you, and the appearance of the young men who eat the portion of the king's delicacies, and as you see fit, so deal with your servants." He says, test it. Give us the vegetables. Let's see what happens. So he consented with them in this matter and tested them for 10 days. And at the end of the 10 days, their features appeared better and fatter in flesh than all the other young men who ate the portion of the king's delicacies. Thus the steward took away their portion of delicacies and the wine that they were to drink and gave them vegetables. So an interesting idea here that Daniel steps up and he says, look, we can't eat this meat. There's two reasons why. It goes against their faith and law according to the Torah, first 5 books of the Bible, that they weren't allowed to eat this meat. They believed that. That was a part of their faith. We're not allowed to eat this. And 2, this meat was most likely offered to idols that they worshiped. And so for them to eat that was them saying that we're okay to worship the same idols that you feed this to, that you give this to on the altar. And so Daniel's stepping up saying, no, I don't want to worship the same gods you worshiped. They want to no part in this. And so he's saying, test it. This may seem like a small thing, but it's not. It wasn't just about going against what they believe. It's a lesson that we all need to see that is very, very important to us. That should be important to us. That our surrounding cultures will fight for our ultimate loyalty. The surrounding cultures will fight for our ultimate loyalty. The people eating, doing, and saying whatever the king and leaders told them to do was a sign of loyalty. If someone told you to do something and you did it, they would say, yes, they're loyal. Well, they'll do anything for you. And so that's what they wanted. They want these guys to be loyal. Let me give you a quick understanding here. They don't know exactly the age of Daniel, but they say a teenager. A young teenager is when he was taken and placed into this mold of a group of other young men, learning and being fed the culture of Nebuchadnezzar. And so it's interesting at the age, because at that age, you pretty much can receive all of these kinds of thinkings, all these types of things. You're very vulnerable, yes? You're very vulnerable. So as you hear these things, as you're being fed these things, it will start to change your mind. It will start to change your process. It will start to feed into your life. And so they knew exactly what they were doing. That they can pour into these people and they could be the next leaders and understand what they wanted them to understand. But as I mentioned, our surrounding cultures will fight so hard for our ultimate loyalty. And it's the same in our world today. Our country, our businesses, our work, our political parties, they're all fighting to have our ultimate loyalty. The question is, where does your loyalty lie? Because you know what trumps every single one of those things? Is Jesus. And if we have Jesus in front and center and as the main thing, then as we view every single thing that's taking place in our surroundings, in our cultures, in everything that we see, we'll see it through the lens of Christ and we'll have a different heart. We'll be able to see past certain things and go, you know what? Maybe I should have that conversation with that person, or maybe I should do this thing, or maybe I should do that thing. We see here that there are opportunities in our own life where we see that the ultimate loyalty that we have is given to something else rather than Jesus. Who can be honest this morning and say that they've been there, where their ultimate loyalty is not with Jesus, it's with something else? Thank you for being honest. When you look around the room, many are raising their hands because we've all been there. We've all been in a situation where our ultimate loyalty is somewhere else. It lies somewhere else, where we know that it needs to lie in Jesus, but sometimes that one thing, whatever it is pulling us harder and harder towards it, and so we give that thing our loyalty. And so it happens daily. Every single day we have the opportunity to either give our ultimate loyalty to Jesus or something else. And it's a battle. It's a battle. And so what we see here again is Daniel stepping up and saying, you know what? I see what you're trying to do here. And my ultimate loyalty lies before Jesus. My ultimate loyalty is I gave my life over to him and what he's declared over me and what he's telling me that I should do. And I'm going to believe that. I'm going to hold to that. And guess what? He knew the cost. And yet he still stepped up and said something. We all know the cost. We all know the cost. But are we willing to be faithful no matter what and no matter the cost for the sake of our ultimate loyalty being in Jesus? We have to ask ourselves these questions. Daniel saw this. He knew that if he would just take the food, which was probably amazing, he's now sacrificing just a little bit of his faith and loyalty to God. And sometimes we think, again, it's just a little thing. But even in the smallest things that we give in our faith can lead to our ultimate destruction. It starts small. We've seen this in our life. When we're willing just to give just a little bit over to the enemy, slowly and slowly that little bit turns to bigger, 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 bigger. Or it starts with, here, my relationship with Jesus, and then I start to just take one step further away, and then one step further away, and then one step further away. It's just the small things, though. Because I've mentioned, if you've been at New Hope before, I've mentioned this. The devil, the enemy doesn't show up like the Kool-Aid man. Do you get what I'm saying? Who's ever seen the Kool-Aid commercial? What does he do? He bursts through the wall, and I find it so interesting that every time he bursts through the wall, the mom's like, hey! Moms would not be like that. They'd make him clean up all that brick and rebuild the wall. It's exactly what they would do. But he doesn't come in just bursting in saying, I'm here. It's slowly that he starts to make you walk further and further away from Jesus. You with me, church? Who knows that that's true? Small steps, small steps. He's like, you're not that far. And the next thing you know, there's Jesus. He knows what he's doing. And so Daniel steps up and says, my loyalty belongs to the Lord. But again, sometimes we think it's little. And we say things like, it's just one look. It's just one time. It's just something small. It's minor. It's not that big of a deal. It is. Because those little things turn into something big over time. And so Daniel steps up and says, no, I'm not willing to give just a little to fracture and destroy the whole. I'm going to stay faithful to what God has called me to. All of us in the room are fighting, again, battles daily to stay faithful and in sometimes hostile cultures where we have to fight to stay faithful to Jesus and what we're called to as believers in him. And it's a battle, but I'm telling you, that battle is so worth it. And as we sung this morning, that battle truly belongs to the Lord. But it starts with us giving that burden over to him and realizing, I need you, Jesus. I need you to fight the battle. I need you in this moment to help me get through the season and situation. We cannot do it by ourselves. It's crazy that we all know that as believers, but yet there's still times, even me, where I go, I got this. I got this. And I don't at all. But yet we're able to say, I got it, Lord. But they were able to stay faithful even in this small moment, even in this thing, and God made them truly unshakable. What we see here in chapter 1, verse 17, here's what happens. As for these 4 young men, God gave them knowledge and skill in all literature and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Listen to this. So God blesses them. He gave them knowledge and skill in all literature and wisdom. Then he goes on, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. And now at the end of days, when the king had said that they should be brought in, and the chief of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar, then the king interviewed them, and among them none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they served before the king. And in all matters of wisdom and understanding about which the king examined them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers who were in all his realm. Thus Daniel continued until the first year of King Cyrus. They stayed faithful. God made them unshakable. They said, we're not going to eat the meat. Give us the vegetables instead. And what we see here is that was enough. They looked better. It said they looked fatter in their skin, right? That they were healthy just with vegetables. That God blessed them in a unique way. They were gifted, and especially Daniel. He could see visions, dreams, and he can understand them. What an amazing gift to have. Because we're going to see that God uses this in the rest of his life. That he stayed faithful, and because of that faithfulness, God showed up and said, hey, you guys, thank you for staying faithful. I'm going to bless you so much that the king is going to notice you above everyone else. And you're going to be able to see visions and dreams and interpret them. You're going to be smarter than anyone else in the room. That's an amazing thing. Like, thank you, Lord. It's incredible. But it wasn't like, look at us. It was pointing all the praise and glory to Jesus, where it should be. And so he blessed them. They were faithful to God even in the midst of a counterculture, and God gave them 10 times the talent and wisdom above anyone else. And again, in this moment, what could have happened is the king could have heard about this, that they were only fed vegetables, that they were not eating of the delicacies of the king, that they were not partaking in the things that everyone else was partaking in. And easily, he could have came and said, cut their heads off. Want nothing to do with them. Get rid of them. And instead, them being faithful led to them being unshakable. And that's what's so key in this. They stayed the course. And we'll see this throughout their lives, these amazing moments where they go, no, you know what? We're going to listen to God first. What's even more amazing is, continue with me in chapter 2. Nebuchadnezzar has a dream. And it's really, really interesting what starts to take place here. It says, now in the second year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Nebuchadnezzar had dreams, and his spirit was so troubled that his sleep left him. Then the king gave the command to call the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, and all the Chaldeans to tell the king his dreams. So they came and they stood before the king. And the king said to them, I have had a dream, and my spirit is anxious to know what happened in this dream. Then the Chaldeans spoke to the king in Aramaic, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will give the interpretation. The king answered and said to them, my decision is firm. If you do not make known the dream to me and its interpretation, you shall be cut in pieces. Look, when people say the Bible is boring, this is epic stuff. This is epic stuff. He responds and says, if you don't tell me, I'm going to cut you to pieces. That's pretty brutal stuff, right? He says, I'm going to cut you to pieces, and your houses shall be made an ash heap. So not only are you going to be cut to pieces, I'm going to burn your whole house down. I mean, this is crazy stuff. Then he says, however, if you tell the dream and it's an interpretation, you shall receive from me gifts, rewards, and great honor. Therefore, tell me the dream and its interpretation. I love what starts to take place in this conversation. They answered again and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will give you its interpretation. The king answered and said, I know for certain that you would gain time because you see that my decision is firm. What are they trying to do? Waste time. They don't know the dream. They're saying, why don't you tell us and then we'll go figure out an interpretation. He's like, no. I need you, who's supposed to be smarter than everyone, who's supposed to be a magician, who's supposed to be a sorcerer, who's supposed to be the Chaldeans, the smartest group among the land, what my dream was about. And all you're doing is wasting my time, trying to tell me that I need to tell you first so then you can go plot and figure out what the interpretation is. And he's catching on. That's not what I want. I want you to tell me. In verse 9, if you do not make known the dream to me, there is only one decree for you. For you have agreed to speak lying and corrupt words before me till the time has changed. Therefore, tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can give me its interpretation. The Chaldeans answered the king and said, there is not a man on earth who can tell the king's matter. They might be wrong. Therefore, no king, no lord, or no ruler has ever asked such things of any magician, astrologer, or Chaldean. It is a difficult thing that the king requests, and there is no other who can tell it to the king except the gods, whose dwelling is not with flesh. For this reason the king was angry and very furious, and gave the command to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. So the decree went out, and they began killing the wise men, and they sought Daniel and his companions to kill them. So he sends a decree. No one can tell me my dream and its interpretation. I want you to slay every single person that says that they're smart, essentially. And they start. And then they want to seek out Daniel and his friends. In verse 14, then the counsel and wisdom Daniel answered Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, who had gone out to kill the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to him, the king's captain, why is the decree from the king so urgent? It's a legitimate question, right? Why is he all mad? He's all emotional. Why is he doing this all urgently? Then he replied, he made the decision known to Daniel. So Daniel went in and asked the king to give him time, and that he might tell the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house and made the decision known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they might seek mercies from the God of heaven concerning this secret, so that Daniel and his companions might not perish with the rest of the wise men in Babylon. Then the secret was revealed to Daniel in a night vision. So Daniel blessed the God of heaven. Daniel answered and said this, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. Listen to these words that Daniel is declaring right now, because they are truly epic. He has given the interpretation, the dream, and the interpretation, and his response is, look at me. His response isn't, look at me. It is instead, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. He changes the times and the seasons. He removes kings and raises up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and secret things. He knows what it is in darkness, and light dwells in him. I thank you and I praise you, O God of my fathers. You have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked of you, for you have made known to us the king's demand. His whole prayer is pointing glory and praise to the one that deserves it. He's thanking the Lord for once again protecting him. He knows he's about to go in there, tell the king exactly what he wants to hear, exactly the dream, exactly the interpretation. And he's declaring to God, God, it's only because of you that I have this. It's only because of you that I have this gift. It's only because of you that me and all my friends are going to be saved through this chaos of him killing every other smart person in Babylon. It's only because of you. But what's amazing is this, is yet again, it's God protecting them, but it's because of what? Their faithfulness. It's because of their faithfulness. They were faithful in the small thing of not eating the meat and the delicacy of the king. And therefore, what did God do? He blessed them. 10 times smarter than anyone else. Gave the opportunity and the gift to Daniel for visions and dreams. And Daniel's like, this is amazing. Probably not knowing, hey, guess what? I'm going to use this later. And I'm going to protect you again because of your faithfulness. And because of that faithfulness, when anything and everything heads your way, you will be able to be unshaken because of it. You with me, church? Isn't that amazing? So it continues on. That Daniel then explains the dream to the king. And I want us to jump down to verse 46. After he has the time with the king and explains the dream, explains the interpretation, here's the response of the king. In verse 46, then King Nebuchadnezzar fell on his face, prostrate before Daniel, and commanded that they should present an offering and an incense to him. The king answered Daniel and said, truly, listen, your God is the God of gods. So all the other idols we're worshiping, all the other statues we have that we're giving meat to and we have altars for, he's saying, no. Your God is the God of gods and the Lord of kings and a revealer of secrets, since you could reveal this secret. Here's what happens. Then the king promoted Daniel and gave him many great gifts, and he made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon. Did you hear this, church? Daniel steps up. He tells him the dream and the interpretation. The king falls flat on his face and says, your God is the God of gods. And then in addition, gives him great gifts. And then he says this to him. I'm going to make you ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief administrator over all the wise men of Babylon. Talk about a come up here where Daniel is sitting as a slave at some point, then thrown into schooling to learn everything about their culture. He says, no, I have a culture of my own, and it's called faithfulness to Jesus, and that's where I'm going to stay. And it doesn't matter what you say to me, I'm going to stay faithful to this. And in turn, God blesses them, and he keeps blessing them. And then in turn, now because of his faithfulness, he's the ruler over all of Babylon. And in addition, becomes the ruler over all the wise men. So now you have a man who has stayed faithful to Jesus no matter the culture, no matter what's taking place. And now he's over all the wise men. And guess what you think he gets to do? Teach them about God. He's going to change the culture from the inside out. And the thing is, we can do the same thing. That's where it becomes amazing. Is that God can use our gifts, our talents for his glory, and we can start to change lives around us only through him. But we first have to understand that we're going to remain faithful despite anything that's taking place. In verse 49 to end chapter 2, it says this, and also Daniel petitioned the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate of the king. So now he gets to bring all of his friends with him and put them in a position that, let me tell you, no Jew has probably ever sat in. No one from Israel, no one from Judah. They were the opposite of the culture. And the king brings them up, places them in a position where they can rule because of, guess what? Their faithfulness. You know, sometimes we feel like, Lord, why am I not in the place I want to be, or the place that I need to be, or this thing or that thing? And sometimes it's just a question, have I been faithful? Because the Bible also says that if we're faithful in the little, what does it say? He'll give us much. He'll give us more. There's more to come. But we got to stay faithful in the little things. We have to stay faithful in the little things. And be willing to be where God has called us to be in the moment. And if it's just with that little thing, we work hard, we remain faithful, we do what he's called us to do. And I believe when we do that, then he starts to add more to it. He starts to move us into the next stage. He starts to give us more opportunity to share about him. He gives us opportunity to pour into the youth. He gives us opportunity to pour into kids. He gives us the opportunity to be the best greeter we can be at the front door. He gives us opportunity to sing praises to his name. But it starts with being faithful. And I'm telling you, church, if we hold to this and we remain faithful in any season, we can then be unshakable when culture is against us. When things arise in our life that seem chaotic, we can truly be unshakable. You know, the Lord obviously has blessed them, and he'll continue on to continue to bless his people. And as they remain faithful, just the stories that we're going to hear in the next 8 weeks are truly amazing. As you see these group of men being faithful to the Lord and doing what God has called them to do. And my hope is that, again, as we see this, that we would be faithful in the same way. That whatever comes our way, whatever heads our way, whatever is going on right now, today, in this moment, you go, you know what, Lord, I'm just going to be faithful to what you've called me to do. Because sometimes, I'll tell you, there's moments where it's like, should we do this anymore? Can I be honest? And the Lord just goes, David, just remain faithful. I got this. Just keep running. You with me, church? You want to keep running? Running after Jesus, running after what he's called us to do. Not being afraid of the world around us, but being able to be faithful so we can be unshakable.